Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by Roman Prokopchuk. Have I got that right, Roman?
Yeah, you got it. Good job.
Good job. Excellent. Thanks for coming on the show, Roman. It's lovely to meet you. And tell us, who are you? What are you doing? Where are you from?
Yeah, my pleasure. So, my name is Roman Prokopchuk. Like you said, am a first generation immigrant from Ukraine to the United States. I came to the US when I was 5 in 1990, when Ukraine was still under the Soviet Union with six other family members. My mom, my dad, my brother, my aunt, and my grandparents to a two-bedroom apartment. It was a good time to come because I went right into kindergarten, so I can learn the language easily. And obviously, if you learn a language before a certain age, how your brain is kind of developing, you kind of lose that accent to that language. I went to school here. I graduated high school. I went to college. College wise, I thought I was going into criminal justice. So my last semester, I interned with the Secret Service on the counterfeit currency squad, held a top secret federal clearance. Prior to that, I thought I was going to be a Marine Corps officer as well. So I was going to go to officer candidate school in Quantico, but I ended up getting a ulcer that was caused by a bacteria called H. pylori that I almost died if I went, and my path kind of changed from that. And then when I graduated college, the recession hit. So state, local, federal agencies in the U.S. stopped hiring. So I was looking for months and months for a job. I got down, I got depressed, couldn't find anything. And then a opportunity presented itself where somebody at the gym basically said, come out to my car, I need to give you something. They handed me a packet about search engine optimization. And that's kind of how I got my start in digital marketing. So since 2008 to now, 2008, 2009, so 12 years or so. In 2012, I started my own agency. I have a podcast as well. And in my personal life, I am a foster parent with my wife since June of 2018. We've had 21 kids in our home.
That's the interview done. Thanks very much, Roman. It's
That's the abridged version.
I love it. That's a hell of a journey. And there's so many things there. It's awesome. Let's go straight in here. I mean, tell me this. What does Fire in the Belly mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's resilience and grit. I think getting that from my immigrant journey and being born into a communist held country. And even though living there for 4 years, seeing how things are, how repressive things are, standing in bread lines for hours with my mom, religious persecution, KGB following you around, stuff like that. I still have kind of, some memories about that, but it's more kind of like that grit and resilience. And, I've been through a lot of stuff personally and professionally outside of that intro. So I think getting myself up and focusing on, the goal at hand, or the fact that, I deserve better. I'm in the US, free market in terms of kind of achieving your goals. And with the internet in 2020, I don't think you have an excuse either. So kind of pursuing that and basically doing right for myself and living up to my own potential, and then thinking of all the people that got me here. My grandfather passed away in February of 2019, and he was kind of my main male role model. And I was kind of grieving and stuff like that for a while. And then I thought to myself, he wouldn't want me to kind of abandon my goal and my path. I think going harder and focusing and overcoming and truly becoming who you are, I would say, destined, or who you are meant to be, in the fact that all the work that you're willing to put into something to achieve something.
I love that. I mean, you're coming at it with a lot of strength and energy as well. But I take it. I mean, listen, that's been a journey for you, right?
Yep. I mean, it's one of those things, like life always puts something in front of you. And I had somebody on my show, and they said everything in life is either a lesson or a blessing. So even if it's negative, if it's pain or grief, obviously coping, going through the natural healing process, but taking something positive out of it and
Right.
applying it to the challenges that you're going to go through inevitably in life, some of which are going to be harder than what you've experienced today or yesterday.
Hmm. Out of interest, do you think you are where you're supposed to be?
I think people are kind of things are put in front of people and they have a choice. I mean, there's, free will, and then there's the universe and the variables that get put in front of you, and maybe you meet the right person and takes you off of path. So personally, I think I'm meant to do what I'm meant to do right now because I'm passionate about it. It wasn't necessarily the career path or direction I thought when I was in college, but it was one of those things I got into it out of necessity and kind of fell in love with it. So, I
Mhm.
mean, I had no other choice because of the recession and months and looking for something. And when an opportunity presents itself, I often say, take that opportunity regardless of, how you feel about it, because it may not come around again.
Sure. And interesting. I mean, you use the word passion there. What, front and center, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, personally, my passions are obviously taking care of my family, my friends, and being a foster dad to now 21 kids and counting. In terms of coming from situations much worse than I've ever experienced. Some of these kids are 1, 2 years old. They've experienced more and will than most adults. So kind of being a male role model and a figure for them, regardless if they stay with us for a month, a week, uh, a year, showing some kind of example, and showing them that there's something more outside of that. So maybe that could be kind of the defining factor, or that kind of bump in the road that pushes them in the right direction later in life. And then personally, I think just passionate about what I currently do in terms of digital marketing, because one, it keeps me kind of energized because it's an ever-changing field. The ecosystem of the internet's always changing, and new things are coming up to help clients and people really achieve success online, and really working obviously with clients and being client facing, and helping companies and other companies, because when they succeed, I succeed. And it's a good feeling knowing that, you're bringing a lead or a sale that really results in, putting food on the table for a company, and helping them retain the employees they have, and hiring new people, and really flourish in terms of being part of that growth process.
That's awesome too. I mean, you talked about it doesn't matter where you are in the world or whether you're in America or whatever. I mean, you connected to the internet, you are global.
Yep, I mean that's another perk of being in digital marketing. All you need is an internet connection. Obviously, if you're working for a company that requires you to be brick and mortar on site, but if you're doing your own thing, you're a freelancer or what have you, and with kind of today's climate, a lot of people are able to work from home long periods of time. So freedom to travel and explore and really experience culture has never been as open. Obviously, stuff has to go back to normal somewhat in terms of travel, but you can still obviously go out, work from outside, do things, travel, and still have the luxury of being able to work.
Mm. I mean, how has the last, whatever it is now, we're 6, 7 months into a little pandemic, how's it been for you?
Yeah, so the work aspect, I've been remote for about 5 years. So that aspect of remote work,
What's the difference?
yeah, getting acclimated. Yeah, the only thing that really got thrown into it as a variable is right before we got locked down in terms of the quarantine thing here in New Jersey in the United States, second week of March. And within those 2 weeks, we got 4 new foster kids, all boys under the age of 6, all with obviously their unique issues. Some have, oppositional defiance disorder, autism, ADD, ADHD, obviously, like we talk offline. And it's really figuring them out and understanding them. And they had no school or daycare because all of that was closed. So they were jumping off walls 24/7. So it's, how do you balance and manage while still giving the attention and the love and support to kids that, let's face it, 6 year olds, their attention span is even less than adults or older kids. So figuring out how to keep them stimulated and happy, and still trying to help them, and help them really heal and kind of recover and get back to the kids that they were before they've experienced all these things that life threw at them at such a young age.
Why foster?
Well, our journey into fostering started. So for the last, 3 to 4 years, we've been doing infertility treatments as well. So in the last 3 years, we've experienced 5 miscarriages, two of which on back-to-back Christmases. Spent probably at this point over $100,000 out of pocket because insurance doesn't cover a lot of the treatments. And we're still naturally trying and still doing the infertility thing, but we thought we can help kids as well. And technically, we're defined as foster to adopt. So if we have a foster child in our home, usually long term, and the parental rights of the parent or guardian are terminated, they would come to us as kind of the first people they would ask if we're willing to adopt the children, if it makes sense, it's the good fit from the child's perspective and from our perspective.
That's, I mean, there's so many parts to that. I mean, even your own journey, and it's, I'm curious, fair play to you guys for taking that on. I mean, one, for being open about, the journey you're going through personally, but then for sort of sharing the love out there, and giving back to the universe as well.
Yeah, and it's each child is different. Each child is a unique learning experience. So whatever we think we're giving to the children, they're teaching us about ourselves, and obviously things that can be applied outside of personal life, things that could be relatable to business and other aspects of life. So I think at this point, the most we've had children in our home at once was five. So I think we could even have more at this point. I think we have like a good process at this point, because like with everything, personal and professional, a good process really helps you go a long way. So I think giving the kids structure, I think one of the things that the kids actually do yearn for is structure, because some kids don't know when their next meal is, don't know when they'll get a hug, don't know, a lot of them have been, abused and neglected, left alone for a day, 2 days at a time. So really creating, an atmosphere of love, but yet structure. So they know when lunch is, they know when dinner is, they know when breakfast is, they know where, playtime is, or reading time, or when they have to go to preschool or school. So it really adds element of stability and security in that sense as well.
Mm. That's what I was going to say. I mean, and the traits of a good, I mean, what do you call it? A foster parent, foster family, foster care? What's your title?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, we're foster parents. I mean, I'm a foster dad. I mean, when I introduce the kids, I introduce the kids as, my children. And I think I try to treat them. I mean, not every foster parent or foster home is a good home. There are those, you
Mm.
hear about in the news. But my wife and I try to show them and give them love like they were our biological kids. So there's not like a wall or you're a label. You're just, our son or daughter while you're with us, if that's temporary or permanent, because I think they obviously yearn for that love, and majority of them have never been treated like that. And letting them see another aspect of life, or how, a parent-child relationship should be, I hope, goes a long way as they're developing into adults.
Mm. I was going to say, and as you say, if they're coming with their own history and back catalogue of events, I mean, that's a lot. I mean, do you try and process, or is it supporting and caring role? Where do you see yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we try to help them through it. Obviously, we have other people like caseworker. They have a nurse assigned, a legal guardian, which is like a lawyer to advocate for them, and other nonprofit people from different agencies and stuff like that. But we're the ones that spend the most time with them. So if we see a behavior or something that, a lot of them are going through traumatic things and trying to process it as a child, it's a lot different, and it's a lot confusing and scary. So sometimes, they'll react events that are traumatic to them in their dreams. So we have to kind of like listen to what they're talking in their dreams, and write it down, and then talk to the caseworker, or look at a behavior, why they're doing that, and when we talk to them. So really figuring out how we can help them better, getting them the proper care and therapy, and different services that they really need to really heal and mend what they've been through.
Do you think there's an element? I mean, that the expression sort of your void is your value. I mean, are you self healing as well? Do you think a little bit, or?
Um, I mean, I would say so. Um, we try, and the things that I've been through in terms of my life, I mean, I can relate to them in terms of domestic abuse when I was younger. So I think some of the older children, I mean, the oldest child we've had was about 9 years old, and everybody tends to be in like preschool age, but still, understanding the situation where a child is coming from. I may have not been through something as traumatic, but obviously, as a child seeing domestic abuse and stuff like that, I can relate to a certain level. So I think being on like an equal playing field, and with whatever you're doing, I think you're coming at it from a different perspective. So if you and I experience the same thing, I think it's easier for us to connect. If we lost, a grandparent in the last 10 years, that we can connect and we can understand that pain and grief better and kind of deal with that. Because outside of the scope of, other foster parents really understanding what it is to be a foster parent, people say, it's commendable. I love what you do, but they don't see kind of the day-to-day struggles that we have to do and advocate on the kids system, in the system for the children, because the system is broke and has a lot of flaws in terms of really giving the kids what they need in terms of when they are in the foster care system, which sometimes is a year, and sometimes, they may be in the system till they age out.
Wow. And I suppose it as well at the time, I mean, it's with lockdown, has it been just a case that nobody's going anywhere? Is that the state?
Well, initially it was for, I would say for, what is it, March, April, May, for about 4 months, it was the most hectic thing because kids have visitation with their parents and guardians, assigned visitation, either supervised or unsupervised, depending where the case is. So with 4 children from 3 different families with 3 different cases, you multiply everything by 3. So everything moved to Zoom calls. So my wife was literally facilitating every week 22 hours of Zoom calls. And that burden was put on the foster parents. And, the system really didn't care, as long as it was getting done. Caseworkers kind of went MIA for a while. And then it was just like, you handle it. Up until about a month and a half ago, that's when in-person visitation started up with certain circumstances. Like the visits have to be in an open area, outside, open air. Kids and the parents or guardians have to wear masks. They can't eat while they're there. So there are like protocols in place, but for majority of this time, visits have been done through Zoom, which is funny because Zoom skyrocketed during the pandemic. And yeah, really, you can't really expect a 2, 3-year-old to sit there for an hour or two on a Zoom call when you dial in for a conference call or a client call or something. And oftentimes 10, 15, 20 minutes, your attention is gone. So
Yeah, it's yeah, good luck with that one. It's like Adam, I mean the amount of resources and logistics and setting up and all that, I mean that's phenomenal. I mean, how do you keep up with it all and afford it and the time and everything else? I mean, it just that blows my mind.
yeah, the time you have, I think it's one of those things that a lot of people, with regardless of what they want to do in life, time's often one of the main excuses. I'm busy now, I can't get to starting that company or reading that book or making that connection or networking or, working on my personal relationships better. And I thought we would never have the time prior to doing this. And I thought, how am I going to take care of, because we don't have biological kids before this, even taking care of one child. And our first placement was 2 boys. So it was just one of those things. It's like, let's do it. It's like the hardest thing is kind of getting past that initial hurdle of yourself. And then when you do it, oftentimes in that kind of scary void of uncertainty, that's where like the magic happens and you experience new learnings and new things and really grow as a person in that kind of area. So I think, yes, time is hectic, but, I'm still working usually, 9 to 5, and then I have a podcast. So usually at night when the kids are sleeping and it's quiet, editing or recording and things of that nature. And during the whole pandemic, my schedule really has revolved around the kids. So they've been dictated by nap time and bedtime. But it's one of those things, like I said, if you really want to do it, even if you're busy, you can find the time to do it. I mean, you'd be surprised if you jotted down where your time actually goes on a daily basis, and using it more constructively or channeling it into something that helps you grow as a person or helps those around you, I think isn't as hard as you think it is.
No, I mean, absolutely, and it's amazing. It is amazing what you can get into shoved into a day when you have to, or it's there in front of you. I know myself. We have twins, and people say I don't know how you do it, and it's like, well, I can't give them back. So what am I going to do? You're gonna you're gonna adjust. You're gonna get used to it, and after a while, it's just that's the new normal. But take us right back, Roman. I mean, mini Roman. What are we looking at as a young fella?
Well, I was very, I guess, self-sufficient. So when everyone came here, my grandparents were already retired in Ukraine. Everybody came here and then had to start working. So my grandfather retired as a carpenter from a furniture company when he was 55. And when he came here, he worked another 20 years doing roofing, which isn't a job someone of that age should be doing, being in the elements on the roof, where people from Eastern Europe were coming here to, make a little money and go back, and they quit after 2, 3 weeks. So he was in 100-degree heat. He was in, freezing weather, and never complained, worked 6 days a week. Sundays, he would go to church morning and night. And I think seeing that as a child and getting that work ethic, I think really helped me. And, now that he's gone, I mean, I wish obviously I had more time with him, but getting those life lessons from him were really impactful in terms of driving me where I am today. And things like being self-sufficient, like I said, my mom had to work. She was there. It's not like she was neglectful, but a lot of the things she would be teaching me, or her and my dad, I would learn myself. So I would go play, and it's like, okay, my mom's busy. Let me teach myself how to ride a bike. So taught myself how to ride a bike, taught myself how to swim, kind of just being self-sufficient and learning. And I think that quality carried over to kind of this career, because I am self-taught and getting experience and just having the will to want to do something. And for the most part, throughout school, I was a good student. And it was just one of those things where you get to a grade, and I think like being smart in a way is stereotypically like you're a nerd or whatever. So I kind of like stopped and shadowed away in terms of shining academically. I would just like coast, but I mean, I had more potential, and then realizing like, why am I doing this? I have no one to impress at a certain point. And really excelling, I don't think academics really make you intelligent, but if you do have that drive to do well in school, don't kind of shadow it. And I would say dumb yourself down for your kind of social group, or who you actually want to be, or you see yourself being friends with. So I think through middle school, junior high school, and high school, I did the best I could. I mean, I played sports and stuff like that as well, which consumed a lot of my time. And that built a lot of, I think, character also, and working as a team for me personally. And I think, I did the best could in school, but I would say like after college and being forced into it is really where I excelled and started thinking on my own. And, I need to do this out of necessity.
No, I mean that's that's always a driver, because I mean I was going to ask. I mean, were you pain driven or pleasure driven at that time? What was your main sort of go to?
I would just say comfort driven. A lot of people like comfort or being in a habit that doesn't rock the boat. So, I'm happy or content with what I have, and I don't want to decrease or increase. I just want to kind of coast. And I think a lot of people in many parts of the or points of their life start kind of coasting, regardless of the reason. Sometimes they have to play it safe for family, loved ones, different other situations. And I think for me, what I realized at a certain point is kind of complacency is the death of innovation. So like free thinking and ideas. And I really have to keep mixing it up, because it's human nature. I'm not going to lie and stand here and say I'm always motivated 100% of the time, like I'm, some motivational speaker. But day in and day out, I constantly have to get myself up and constantly have to push myself. Some days, I may skip something, or some days I don't do something that I want to do, but I get back on it, and kind of get back on my path and trajectory the way I can motivate and push myself, and keep focusing on the direction that I'm heading.
I'm curious. I mean, even at mini Roman there, what was in store? What was your go to? I mean, it sounds like your grandparents were real role models for you there, and your mother. You'd said previously your father was off the scene. So
Yeah, I mean, my father was around, but he wasn't present. He was always working. Like I said, like you mentioned, my aunt, my mom, and my grandmother really raised me for the most part. And then my grandfather obviously was there because he was working. He had no choice. He was there on Sundays, spending time with me, or nights, and giving me life lessons and stuff like that. But yeah, I was basically raised for the most part by women. And I think that's a unique perspective, because throughout my career, I've had a lot of, strong women as, people I had to report directly to, and that kind of relationship, I think, helped me as well to, understand, I would say, women better. I'm not gonna be this person that I understand women 100% of the time, because in terms of my wife, she would not say that's really accurate. But I think that developed a certain level of emotional empathy early on, and a emotional IQ, or a start of, and helped me to this point in my life.
So what were you going to be when you grew up?
Um, in high school, I thought I was gonna go pro in something in terms of sports. So, I mean, I'm from Eastern Europe. I played soccer in school. I mean, I got scouted for a few Division 2, Division 3 colleges in the U.S. outside of the state I was in, and I thought, I want to pursue this. And then it was just like one of those things where, I was good, but I didn't want to go out of state. I didn't want to leave my family. I think I'm fairly like well coordinated. And if you put me in any sport, so I played basketball, I played baseball, I played football, I ran track. So fairly fast and fairly coordinated, where you can throw me in a sport where it's like, throw this ball, catch this ball. And I'm fairly good as, whatever team I'm thrown in on.
Oh, fair play. It's always good. I mean, were you running into school or running out of school or just present?
I think present, depending on the grade in the school I was in. Sometimes there was, kids can be rough. I know there's a whole bullying thing now that's more brought into light, but seeing kids get bullied, people saying dumb stuff about, me being an immigrant and stuff like that, eventually kind of weighs on you. But I kind of brushed it off. And then high school years, like I said, I played sports, so that kind of consumed a lot of the time. So when I wasn't in school, and it took me away from school sometimes, because you would have to leave half day to travel to a game, maybe an hour away with your team and stuff like that. So I think a lot of the camaraderie while I was in organized sports was around my team, and friendships with the athletes on my team, to better develop our personal relationship, and obviously that chemistry on the field or on the court.
Absolutely. So are you an only child or siblings or what?
I have a younger brother. He is, how old is he? He's 4 years, and he's about 5 years younger than me. So when I came here, I was four. He was basically a baby, a few months during that whole journey. And to get to the US, we had to go through Vienna, Austria, Rome, Italy, and then came here to basically the distant family that sponsored us as our sponsors. That was kind of the way. At that point, you left Eastern Europe, kind of the process.
I was going to say, and what do you know what triggered the move?
Well, one, the immigration became more lenient. It was 2 years before the Ukraine got its independence, and it was the whole kind of perestroika movement. The Berlin Wall was down. People were freer to leave on during certain circumstances. So the circumstance was, we had a distant family member, you needed a sponsor to come here. So somebody basically that, like, they're going to stay with us. We're vouching for them in terms of the safety, and financially. You needed somebody in terms of kind of sign off for you. And the main reason, I think, personally, was leaving because of a repressive system. And the other reason, I think, religious persecution, because during this whole time, my family believed in God, and Jesus Christ being our Lord and Savior, and we went to church. Obviously, in communism, technically there is no God. You kind of serve the state, and we still went to church. We still kind of fellowshipped with other believers. Met at houses. I mean, obviously I was young, but I still remember stuff. And you would see, cars with KGB agents parked outside, jotting down who attended, follow you home, stuff like that. So another main reason was religious persecution.
It just blows my mind. It's like it's never mind a different world or a different time. It's like a different planet. All this going on. I mean, it must seem almost foreign to you now, does it?
Yeah, it's foreign, and I think coming from a situation, there are a lot of people that end up in really high roles or starting really big companies that are coming from really repressive and traumatic, situations. A lot of company founders, unicorn companies, billion-dollar companies, their kids or came as immigrants, or their kids of immigrants from a lot of the times Eastern Europe or other countries that they fled from, religious persecution, war, famine. And I think that gives them an extra a set of skill sets in a way. So I think I have that grit. So I often say it's first world problem versus third world problem. Like, I have to take a second and go back. Okay, the lady got my food order wrong. Is that really the end of the day? I mean, I'm the kind of person that doesn't complain. So if I'm not allergic to anything, and if they bring me something and it's like not what I wanted, I'll usually not even complain and just eat the thing, because it's not even a big deal to really make a scene about it. But I think it's one of those things where people, if they really took the time, they're complaining about things that are trivial. But if you just take a step back, you have clean water, you have food, you're healthy, you have shelter, your loved ones are safe, and you know where they are, and they're healthy as well, then majority of what you have to worry about is trivial. I mean, obviously you have business, you have finances and stuff like that, but I often say, in terms of my skill set, even if I lost everything financially today, I know I can get back to that level, because I know my skill set and I know my experience at this point. So that's not even things. It's just the variables that are uncertainties that I worry about, health, my loved ones and things of that nature.
It's contrast, right?
Yep.
It is amazing when you have that perspective. And I mean, it is interesting, and you brought it up there about almost it is the contrast, the polarity of people who have maybe come through something, whether as you say, it's your history, your background, and all that does seem to excel some people, and that is a real fuel and a passion for them, and a drive, whereas other people don't seem to do so well in that situation. Any idea what the difference is?
I mean, it's, well, for me, it's as simple as a choice. So, like you mentioned, you can use that as a crutch and the excuse why you didn't make it. You weren't given these favorable variables or the right kind of environment to flourish, and even things like, okay, maybe your dad was an alcoholic. So you can use that as an excuse to turn to alcoholism. And when you do use that as a crutch or a vice, you can say, it was all my dad. Or, I mean, obviously there's circles that need to be broken over time, because things exist in families oftentimes for generations. So I'm not going to say that doesn't exist. But if you make the choice to turn and go a different route, which oftentimes is harder, ultimately it's a you versus you battle. I mean, the hardest thing is to get out of your own head. So you have to make that choice. You have to carry that out into existence at some point, and nobody's going to do it for you. I mean, yes, you can have negative variables around you that push you to that. If you don't take yourself out of it, you may fall into it. But at the end of the day, you have to give permission for somebody to impact you in a negative way, their negativity, or whatever they're coming at you, or you have to succumb to a situation of a vice or whatever that negative thing is.
It is amazing self-perception. But talk to us about depression.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I was never really diagnosed for it, but it wasn't like I experienced anything like that before. And obviously, that is brought about by a lot of things, in terms of a loss, of suffering something financially. And I think when it happened, it was one of those things basically where you have this gung ho attitude, or at least I did at the time. I just graduated college, I have a degree, I should easily just hand my resume to somebody or my degree, and they just say that's hired. But it's not the real world. So in college or university, it's still a bubble, a safety net. So you don't really have the training wheels off yet. So when I graduated, I thought, okay, it'll be a month, it'll be 2 months. And then when you throw a variable like a recession in, one of, the worst that, at least the US has experienced, I know Europe as well, in decades, nobody's going to hire you in that economic climate either. So you constantly kind of get up and you feel good about that day, but then it gets harder and harder and harder, and then you just, you don't want to do the same things. You don't even want to apply to any jobs. So I think it's just one of those things that obviously was causing for me to evaluate my worth, and am I good enough? Do I have something to add, either personal skills, soft skills, or the things that I've learned in school? So it, I mean, if the opportunity really didn't come about, I don't know if I would have had the same opportunity, but I was still kind of somewhat driven at the time. And I think the only thing that kind of kept me sane was really regularly going to the gym and lifting, and really like lifting heavy and getting my mind off it. That was kind of my therapy session every day. And I think without that, I don't know what direction I would have went, or what vice I would have found. But just being in my own kind of element and getting out of my head for that hour and a half a day really got me through that.
It's interesting. So, I mean, you were able to sort of maintain self momentum to that point, even through a fairly, you know, what may feel like a helpless situation, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's those things where you feel like inadequate. So friends that got jobs and want to hang out, I kind of started distancing myself from friends and family. Didn't want to go out, didn't want to do much, just kind of stay in bed on my laptop applying to jobs, or just sleeping. And it was just one of those things where, like, having a habit or some kind of routine also really helps you through something like that, or at least in my situation as well.
Mm. It is tough, and listen, I think we're in for a bit of a rough ride over the next year or two as well, after what's going on here in the world. That it's going to take a lot of inner talk, and being strong, right?
Yeah, and you have to remember, you can't control what happens around you. You can only do with what you have, and make it kind of work for you. So since March till now, you could have just sat there and, maybe you lost your job and kind of been spiteful and, why me, why other people? Or you could have taken the route of, okay, let me find something else. I mean, from 2008 to 2020, the internet is a whole different, ball game. So in terms of information or learning everything, you can literally find information on anything. Yes, you may not have the degree, but you may become an expert in something else and really understand, learn it, and know it. And then when you start actually putting that knowledge out there, that you're knowledgeable, building your brand and getting in front of the right people, you may be given that opportunity to have that pivot or shift, and taking something that was traumatic, dark, and didn't know where you were to go, and pivoting and making it whatever you want to make it.
In terms of role models or influences in your life, I mean, who are you sort of who do you follow in terms of characteristics, and who's your go-to?
Yeah, like we talked before, I would say my grandfather, because of his work ethic, because of his kind of faithfulness, and his commitment to his family, and doing the best he could. I mean, I would say I get things from people in terms of little chunks of knowledge, but I don't like emulate, or I put anyone on some kind of pedestal, almost like an idol, like, this is the person, and I want to be like him. Me personally, I want to be myself, but take the learnings from these people to help me avoid something that they may have went through, or take some of their knowledge and apply it to some of the things that I have going on in my life as well.
Hmm. I mean, as you were saying before, I mean, there's so many points when things could have gone pretty bad for you, and got, you know, looking back now, do you know what sort of carried you through, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think just faith, just, I'm not gonna say I always did it, but stepping back for a sec and taking that heated moment and taking the emotion out of that decision making process. So I had somebody on my show that helps C-suite executives make better decisions for their companies, and majority of the decisions that lead them astray or personally or emotionally driven. So they don't make a calculated decision with all the data and all the facts in front of them, because something is blurring that decision making process. So I don't, because I mean, my wife would kill me if I say I always do this, because sometimes, I'll go into an argument. It's one of those things as a guy, I don't know about you, but there is no winning in an argument with your wife. So it's just like, maybe you get some kind of stalemate and a white flag for a day or two, but it's going to put you in a situation a lot worse than you were. So I think it's one of those things, professionally and personally. I think some, not all, taking a breather, taking whatever, praying, clearing my head, walking, going for a workout, getting myself like mentally right, to then go back to maybe that email that maybe was sent to you passive aggressive, or that argument you had with a friend or family member, and then addressing it from, this is how I feel about it. Let me know how you feel about it. These are the facts, and how can we move forward with it? I think basically disaster avoidance in that sense.
Oh, I love it. So you talk about then, so the SEO sort of, and the was it tapes or CDs? What came into your life? You were saying.
Well, a packet from a trunk, basically. That was the start.
I didn't know where you were going with that. I was like, gee,
It could have went a lot of ways. It could have been some illegal dealings, like, here, this may help you out. Go sell this. But no, it was funny because it was 2008. So, believe it or not, that was 12 years ago. But people did, give other people packets or printouts and stuff like that. So after my workout, I got a packet, and I was told to read up on this and then go online, read more about it. And then, that I can do it for that person's company. And that's how I got started. And, one of the first learning experiences with that, after 2 months, I was supposed to actually be paid, but the person's cat got cancer. So they spent like $20,000 on the cat, and was just like, sorry, I can't pay you. I mean, I just dropped all this money on my cat. So it was just one of those first kind of business or a life experiences when it came to finances and business dealings. And then I put my resume out there, and I got picked up by another company called LexisNexis. It was LexisNexis, Martindale, Hubbell, Reed Elsevier, in terms of all those holding companies. And that's where I really developed the skill set. I had clients to work on. I kind of perfected my craft in terms of digital marketing, and moved out of really SEO because I saw the internet changing, and I didn't want to pigeonhole myself just to be, an SEO expert. So I started learning social media, paid and organic strategy. Obviously, it was still in its infancy. Paid search, content strategy, local search, analytics, online reputation management, and really started being a more well-rounded, digital marketing professional.
I'm still laughing and saying, just beware of the cat. It's like,
Yeah, I'm a dog person. I have 2 dogs, so you got to watch out for the cats.
I was gonna say that cat's gonna lose you all your money. It's like, or yeah, it's like, I love
Yeah,
it.
I mean, pets are expensive. I didn't know at the time like what he was really going through, because I didn't have any pets. My dog actually, a year and a half ago, got osteosarcoma. So she had to get a tumor in part of her shoulder removed. And that was like $15,000 out of pocket. So it was just one of those things where it's like, that adds up. And if you're not in that situation, you may feel that that person is crazy, but don't know how long that cat was, or what that cat meant to that person, or him and his fiance. And reevaluating it, obviously you look at situations a little differently. So for me personally, my dog, after this surgery she had last October, she's still with us. She's going to be 10 in November. So having that extra time with the dog that I've had for a decade, I think that money negates it. But if you're looking at from an outside perspective, you spent how much on your dog or how much on your cat? So I think it's one of those things I can look back now and look at it a little differently.
I'm trying to work out. I mean, you're 30 now, right? Yeah,
36. I wish I was
36.
30.
Don't we all? Don't we all? That's it. So you were what, 24, 25 when you hit the world of SEO and started coming in?
Yep. 24, 25. I mean, I was literally looking for a job probably for over a year after college without finding anything. I just started switching fields, started contacting people to go work on like oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico, just like anything, like just get me out of here. Let me just work and see if I like it. And just let me put, food on the table and be self-sufficient. I think that was one of the biggest things that got me down too. I couldn't take care of myself. So, throughout all that time, I mean, I had a job in college, I had a job in high school, off and on. And it was just like, I could provide for myself and get myself the things that I needed. And that taking away that self-sufficiency for me really obviously played a toll into that, I guess depression or being down and out for a while.
Curious. I mean, what was your first job?
My first job, it was at a place called Manhattan Bagel. It was like a morning breakfast place where they made bagels and like served you breakfast sandwiches and stuff like that. So that actually taught me a lot of work ethic, because in the summer of ninth grade, I would have to wake up at 4:30 in the morning, because it was more like,
Nice.
a bakery. They have to bake everything. So I have to go in there, help the people baking prep, set everything up, count the register and, put everything out. So it really taught me about working and a schedule, especially waking up that early as a 13, 14-year-old is like unheard of for anything other than like video games nowadays. So it really kind of like propelled me in terms of hard work. Then I worked in kind of retail, seasonal roles. I did construction. Like I said, I had the internship on the Secret Service, on the counterfeit currency squad. So I think regardless of what you do, I mean, you can be a fry cook, you can be, picking up a litter or whatever, like take something out of it and really do what you're doing to the best of your ability, because you don't know who's watching. So you may have aspirations and may have all these degrees to do something, but you work at a coffee shop. So make the best cup of coffee that person will ever have, and then strike up a conversation, or just people simply observing like your passion about your job, regardless of what you do, really can lead to conversations and really can lead to your foot in the door, because I hire people soft skills over hard skills. So if people are passionate and are driven, because I think you can teach anything that you can, open a book. You just have to have that person want to learn it. But all these interpersonal and soft skills, they're rare to find. And in business, they're really important. So don't kind of knock what you do currently if you don't think it's as grand as you would like it to be, or it's not the role you're in. Really put your best foot forward, because you don't know who's watching.
Mm, it's so true. And someone said to me, it's like, it's easier to slow someone down than it is to speed them up. It's, they're coming in with the core skills and enthusiasm and desire to get on. You can work out the rest.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I would take somebody that's hungry and willing. And, in my situation, I was out learning and outperforming people within my industry. And in my second role, after 2 years, I was managing, seven-figure portfolios where, 2 years prior, I was, in bed kind of moping around. So you don't necessarily know where life will take you even tomorrow, but you have to kind of be ready to make that leap.
I mean, talking about that, and I suppose, are you active in terms of goal setting and planning and things like that? Both now and future.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I can be better, but I think really sometimes different parts of my life get crazy. So with right now 4 foster kids, everybody has different doctor's appointments, different schedule and stuff like that. So that has to be on a calendar. So then things like recording interviews like we're doing on your show, other media appearances, bookings on my show. So that's just the podcast component. Then I meetings, calls, and things of that nature for my company. And then the things that I have in terms of projects. So, website redesigns for personal branding, different personal branding things, different charitable things. And it's like, you need to write it down or you're not gonna get it done. So I think if you try to do everything, you're gonna end up doing nothing. So when it gets really chaotic, I'll at least jot down, these are the 10 things I need to do today. And this is kind of like arranged by importance level. And that really helps me, because it's like it keeps me on track. I think oftentimes if my wife needs me to run errands, if she gives me a list, she's more likely to get what she asked for than if she just says, hey, go do these 5 things. So I think there's something about writing something down. It's kind of putting that into reality, or the first step of actually doing it. So taking it out of your mind, jotting it down, now you can see it, it's visible. And then it's up to you to kind of take that next step as well. But yeah, I mean, long-term goals as well. The long-term goals may change or pivot a little bit more, but the short-term goals to achieve something within that general area are, fairly constant.
And in terms then, I mean, for yourself, when you're actually planning out and planning out your days and go forward, I mean, do you take time for yourself? I mean, do you do self-care, or is it that just slots in somewhere in between?
Well, now we have a 2-week baby, so 2-week-old baby. So self-care is somewhat on the back burner. I'm not gonna lie, my wife is doing a lot of the watching and the feeding. The baby's eating every 3 hours right now. But I mean, I try to take at least an hour or two, at least an hour to try to work out and get my mind, in the right place. For me, that's what really gets me back to somewhat of an equilibrium.
Hmm.
And then I try to either have one thing learn or improve on each day. So to technically become a better person or a more well-rounded person tomorrow than I was today, regardless of how small it is. It doesn't have to be huge, but taking something and learning either, interpersonal skill or something that maybe I can work on in terms of like my character or something I see a flaw in myself, and get me that much closer to that point where I'm content with the progress. Or it's something specific like, I want to book, 10 interviews on 10 other media things for next month. How am I going to do that? Am I going to use the internal, external resource? Am I going to do it myself? Am I going to pitch them differently? And how long that's going to take? So like, there's smaller goals like that. I think personal branding has been big and really propelled me, I would say, in the last 4 years or so, really being focused on it, because I think there's a lot of people that are experts in things, but don't necessarily make the world know that they are an expert. And you can't expect somebody to find or come to you or, even have a conversation about something that you're maybe a thought leader in, if the world doesn't know. So really getting my message out and who I'm about, and what skill sets I bring to the table, both from a professional standpoint and how those things in my personal life have impacted or added to, and vice versa, because I think obviously they're interconnected and they spill over personal, professional, and vice versa.
Give us your skill set. What's your
Amazing. That's
across
game
the board?
over.
Done. Drop the mic and walk away.
Yeah, I mean, anything I want. I'm the type of person that's self taught and self-driven. So anything I want to learn, I will learn. So like I said, from my childhood, like riding the bike by myself, swimming, and just teaching myself different things. So I think I wanted, like, I have my own podcast. So for 5 years prior to wanting to start it, I always said, let me start a podcast. No, it's too hard. Where am I going to host it, equipment, so on and so forth. And I'm like, I mean, there has to be a point where I have to do this, or I'm going to be like 60, 70 years old, and it's not going to go anywhere. So finally, December of 2017 at this point. So it's going on, it'll be 3 years. I just started it, and it's one of those things where I recorded on my cell phone. I didn't have a mic. I didn't have anything. And then it slowly progressed to, a mic, me sitting down at the table with the sound shield, then like slowly into this setup, because I started doing more other shows and media publications as I started, putting out more content myself. And it was just one of those things where it's like, if you look at my setup, even just something simple like my whole recording setup from 3 years ago, it's like, oh yeah, you came a long way. And it's like, it's 3 years. It's a gradual process. It's not like I snap my fingers and like magically I know how to, sound engineer or edit content or do everything that comes to, putting out a decent sounding podcast that actually adds value to the audience. So it's not like one of those things where it like magically happens. And it's like with everything, you need to invest that time and really be passionate about it, because uh, one thing I fell in love with is editing the audio. So just watching the sound waves, and then it's one of those funny things. I think people that only edit audio or podcasts is like you start just memorizing yours or that person's sound waves for like filler words like like, and then other things that are repetitive, and then you like learn that pattern, and it's actually really interesting. But if you asked me 4 years ago, I would probably say no. I would probably never do it. Maybe I'll jump on an interview, but I'll never have my own. And at this point, episode 184 launched yesterday. I have 70 episodes in queue, which is a good problem to have. In the last year and a half, I've been on about 80 shows, probably 40 other shows during COVID. So it took the time doing that for COVID. And if I just sat there and did nothing, I would be in the same place I was, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. So it's one of those things where it's like, you want to learn something, you want to do something. And at this point, a podcast is, I mean, I'm a big proponent of audio content. So the amount of people that reach out to me now, that if I sent an email to them, 3, 4 years ago, I wouldn't even get a reply, because now you have that leverage. You have a platform for them to talk about, and you're adding value because they get to speak to your audience. And without that, you may not, I interviewed one of the founding members of the Medellin drug cartel. I mean, I would probably never come about that person in real life, and kind of them talking about their story of redemption, and then other kind of former pro athletes and just people from all walks of life from all over the world. And if somebody maybe is in, the UK, London, Australia and Sydney, or the Netherlands, I may have never came across them or their story. And they, I think everyone has a powerful story to share for something. They have something to give. It's just having the proper platform and having them tell it the way they should tell it, in terms of, in my opinion, just unfiltered, raw and real, and just really connect with the audience.
What's your goals with the podcast?
The goals were just a passion project, but now I've been contacted by a few podcast networks to be part of their network. So now it's more of, okay, I'm getting ad revenue. Obviously, I only have ads on there. I don't have direct sponsorships like personal relationships yet. So it's on a CPM model. So I usually get probably around $20 per 1,000 listens / downloads. So I make a couple $100 a month on that. That really goes right back into the podcast itself. It's not much to even be profit, but new equipment, new software, just different relationships. I mean, the goal, I really enjoy talking to people. I really enjoy interviewing people. I think interviewing in the last year and a half, I've interviewed probably like 200 people. So that's made me a better person, a better interviewer, a better interviewee, and really has added value to my life. And I think one of the reasons, because my show was never interview format to begin with. The month after my grandfather passed away, I switched over to an interview format. And I credit that a big part of the grieving process that helped me heal, because a lot of those initial conversations went back to grief and loss and, things that people have experienced and how they've coped, and relating to them. It was really therapeutic in a way. So right now, maybe growing the show, well, obviously growing the show has probably at this point 160-ish thousand plays and downloads. So in the next few years, growing and growing, and it's something I enjoy, and having it a bigger part of my life. I would like to work more in the space. In terms of digital marketing, I've already done different media buys in the podcast space. So PRX Network which is a top 5 podcast network, basically did a media buy for 200,000 plays and downloads versus their shows like TED Talks and things of that nature they have on their network. So I think I'm becoming more and more intertwined within, I guess, the podcast industry, making connections. And I think right now it's really about adding value, because at the end of the day, I think adding value and leaving a legacy has propelled me to where I am now when I switched over to that mindset. And even now, I try to add as much value to the guests that I have on, to people that I'm on their shows. So, helping them or sharing the shows that I've been on, maybe I can connect you to those hosts. If there's any synergies there, if there's any guests that I've had on that they would like on. So it's just kind of giving back and trying to give more than I receive, basically, and not really ask for anything in return, because those kind of situations come and really are fruitful in the future, and times you don't even know that they're going to deliver anything. And it's just kind of doing things for the right reason. But I would say being more involved in kind of the podcast industry, and maybe even doing things in terms of a marketing perspective, because going into a show with digital marketing experience and having an agency, I mean, the marketing side, like I know how to market it in terms of social media, in terms of other areas, cross promoting it. So that's fine. But, other things in terms of relationship building, that's just legwork in terms of talking to the right people, staying in contact with different hosts and different networks and stuff like that. So I think making more and more relationships, making the right relationships, and really collaborating, because a lot of the stuff I share is about advocacy and like changing the foster care system, or just bringing light to things that people have never really thought about. And a lot of things that I've done, and even interviews that I went on, were supposed to be an hour of business talk and SEO, and ended up being 40 minutes out of that hour talking about foster care and how we can make the system better, and the flaws in the system and experiences that we've had. So I think it just keeps sharing my story, and really hopefully impacting people. I mean, I've gotten people say, your thing touched me, or I related to it, or then they follow up with different questions about them becoming foster parents and what it's like, or even in general things, dealing with, 5 miscarriages and stuff, or starting a marketing agency, or anything that I've been through. And I think it's really rewarding when somebody comes to you and you've impacted them in one way or another.
Do you get inspired by talking? I mean, some people need to go quiet to get inspired. Some people, I know I am. The more I talk, I'm going, oh, that actually sounds quite good sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it's not like I'm not passionate about what I'm saying, but
Hmm,
oftentimes, if it's something that's really close to me, if you listen to any of my interviews or part of interviews when I talk about becoming or being a foster parent,
hmm.
or the miscarriage, or anything in my personal life, like you really hear, the emotion in it, and like I guess the grit in my voice. So I think me talking in it, and it's just like searching my head while I'm speaking. And a lot of times, like you said, I listen back to a recording, I'm like, did I say that? That's actually good, I need to write that down. So I think it's like pulling things out of your mind, and maybe even out of your subconscious, that you never knew were there. And a lot of times, I mean, I do say dumb stuff, but well, once in a while it's like, okay, this could work.
You've mentioned the word grit a couple of times, and I think it's Angela Duckworth, the book on grit. I think it's great. What does grit mean to you?
It's just a toughness, I guess, molded by where I come from, and never forgetting those experiences. So no matter where you come from, if it's impoverished area, third world country, a country out of communism, or your whole upbringing in terms of your family structure, what happened there, I think it's just like using it and channeling it. And if they are painful things, don't suppress them and then hide them. That's who you are. That's the scars you have. And it's okay to feel all that, you know what I mean? And hiding it only keeps yourself kind of bottled in, and eventually you'll spill over. But grit is just kind of like perseverance for me, and just like those scars that, I mean, I like history, and I like movies and stuff about like warriors and Vikings and stuff. And it's just one of those like person coming back in the season from battle, like you have that kind of aura about you. You've been through all these things. It's being battle tested. I think that's the easiest way I can say it. So you've been through kind of the ringer, you came back, you're still standing, and you're ready for kind of the next challenge that comes to you, because you can overcome it. I think there's a quote, or a part of a quote. It's like uh, something about like a warrior stands in front of a mountain or something, and it's like you can't move me, but it's something like that. And like something said in terms of like I am something. I wanted to remember this quote, but now it just like slips from me, and it's just like annoying. But I say it to myself a lot of the time. But it's basically like you're more powerful than you think you are. So regardless of who you are, and if you think you're just one person, you can't make a difference, I mean, I can name people in history that were, one person movements that really changed the course of history.
It is, and as you say, you don't know. It could be the smallest of ideas, and it doesn't take much, and I was just by coincidence looking, they talk about the acorn and the oak tree, that's little seeds comes big things, and I think it's amazing, once you do and getting out of your unconscious way.
Handle the storm, and then the warrior says back, "I am the storm," something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's great. It's understanding who you are and what you are. I mean, do you there you go, there's a question. I mean, do you know yourself?
To the extent that I can, I think it's one of those things where throughout life you change, and
Mm.
it's one of those things I ask. So like, what motivates you? And that motivation today is different than yesterday, than 5-10 years ago. So I think it's understanding who you are now and how and why you're changing. And if you are changing, are you changing for the right reasons? How are you improving, or how are you digressing if you think you're digressing? It really reevaluating who you are. I mean, obviously it's really hard to look at yourself from a, outside perspective. And a lot of the behaviors that are kind of imprinted or taught to you through different experiences within your family, or something that you've done that's become a habit that may not necessarily be bad, but you could improve it. So for me, in terms of like my tone, my wife always says the tone you're saying it. So it's not necessarily like what you say in terms of the words, like not something mean, but it's the tone that I'm saying it to her. And I don't necessarily like agree half the time, but she's recorded me and played it back, and it was like, all right, yeah, I sound a little like off-putting the way I've been saying that, so maybe, yeah, let me try to do something about it. And those things that you aren't aware of are oftentimes the hardest things to actually change, and it's really hard to break any habit. And I think that's one of those things where like you can come to or better understand yourself. And regardless of, like you said, knowing and understanding yourself, and then also taking that outside perspective to help in better understanding yourself as well.
Mm. I'm really struck by your level of awareness, because most people start off on the premise that I'm perfect. What the hell's wrong with you? What
No, no, no.
you seem to go the other way.
No, I think everyone is, I'll go the other way. Everybody's imperfect, and they should own their imperfections, and their imperfections make them unique in who they are. Because if they didn't have those, everybody would be robots. So my whole thinking is completely flipped outside of that traditional thought process.
And from a podcast perspective, and what's your style? What's your default that you like to get to?
Yeah, I mean, on my show, I have a loop. It's not really a script. It's just 4 questions to really stay the course of the show. So you would have your traditional, what's been your journey to now, and people would give, a bridge version of who they are, or at least mention the things that they think, the audience would like to hear about, and then I go into it. So it's very low key, very conversational, and just trying to like drill deep into like meaningful conversation. So oftentimes, guests would be like, okay, I didn't even think of it that way. But it's like, I just ask people, I leave a few minutes at the end of the show, whatever you want to mention, just let's have a like genuine conversation, really jump into like meat and potatoes of a conversation, and add value, and maybe come to some kind of realization, maybe improve ourselves within that conversation. Because I make it a goal of every interview to take one thing out of that interview and apply it, and try to do something with it in my life. And I ask what motivates you. It's a fairly general question, but oftentimes people need to think and maybe re-examine those motivations. And a weakness they've turned into strength and advice for the audience. But then that back and forth can go any direction. But that my show is kind of guided by those 4 questions, if you will. And I mean, it's a natural conversation where, I mean, I try to make the guests feel as comfortable as possible and let them express themselves, and give them a platform to really, highlight who they are, and maybe things that they weren't able to say elsewhere, or people that may not even know that thing about them.
What's a what would you say is your superpower then?
My superpower, um, I think just getting back up because I don't know if you would call it a superpower, but if you look at Fortune companies or other companies, the reason that they're here, they just withstood the test of time. It's just one of those things like a wave keeps hitting you and you keep getting knocked down. Eventually, like, all right, is everybody down? Did everybody leave? You know, if you're the last standing, you're the last standing. And oftentimes, you know, a company, the product or service may be amazing, but sometimes it's the thing that withstood. It's the only thing left in the industry because they didn't give up. So I mean it's a simple analogy, I guess, but kind of getting up and pivoting, and whatever comes at you knocks you down, you may not get up the same way. You may have to recalibrate the way you're standing to offset that impact a second time around, or pivot into another career, or go somewhere, maybe move, maybe make another life-changing kind of decision. You live in the US, maybe you're moving to, I don't know, Vietnam or something crazy out of nowhere. So really taking that, I guess, hit, I would say, and being self-aware enough to, if you need to pivot, pivot.
And that's awesome too, because I mean that's reflecting in the fostering side, where you're helping people that are pivoting in their lives through whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. I learned so much from every kid because every kid brings something else to the table.
Hmm.
And it's like having 21 children. No one really, most people in their life aren't going to have 21 children. I mean, it's 21 and counting. And each child is coming with a unique circumstance, unique set of, you know, personal kind of uh, identifiers that can shine really of who they are and make them as an individual, but may have been suppressed and kind of bottled up because of this pain and abuse and things that they've seen. So it's really seeing how the kids are, who the kids are, their strengths and weaknesses, how we can do, or what we can do to help them get back to really being kind of a loving, you know, carefree child. I mean, you can't really get rid of those memories and things of that nature, but try to make them as best as possible become, or go back to that like carefree childhood scenario where they're safe and they can be children, and then really taking something or how they're dealing with those situations. Okay, they may have experienced you know, physical, sexual, and all kinds of crazy abuse, and they're taking it better than, you know, somebody complaining about, you know, a cup of coffee or like whipped cream in their coffee. So it's like really, like we've talked about, like perspective, and that really keeps me grounded too, seeing how they are, you know, how they actually care and how they're able to quickly rebound. I think children are able to repress and hide and bottle up like really traumatic things and get past them. Obviously, those have to be dealt with over time before, you know, through childhood and when they become adults, but their perseverance is like crazy. You know what I mean? Like 21 kids, and the way they heal and the way they react are all different. And I think, you know, looking back, it's really amazing to see. And I've learned something from 21 kids, and that's kept me grounded as well.
It's like a book in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I could write a book about each child alone. It's just, you know, we've had children as short as 2 3 days to, you know, children for a year. So it's, you know, and we miss and care about all the children regardless how long they've been with us, and love each one of them, and really care about where they've ended up, and hopefully they ended up in a better situation that they came out of.
What what do you sort of hope, skills that you can put across and help them with, during their time with you?
Yeah, I think majority of coming from a single mother, so they don't know what a male role model or a male, you know, figure, or a positive male role model really looks like. So just stepping in, and as long as they are here, just being their dad, just, you know, try to bond with them, trying to help them, try to teach them things that they may have not, you know, ever gotten taught. So just holding a fork correctly, tying their shoes, teaching them how to tie their shoes, helping them brush their teeth. And it just depends on how far kind of like I guess, delayed or they regressed in certain situations. And the developmental stage that they are in, obviously you're going to treat a 2-year-old a little differently than a 4-year-old, and what they're going to learn and what you're going to teach them. But I think just being present and being there as a male role model, and they see me working and they go, oh yeah, you're recording, or yeah, you're on computer working. So just showing them a work ethic, and they don't have to go somewhere and sit at a desk 9 to 5. Like, there are other things where are a little bit more exciting. They can do other things with the internet connection, not only digital marketing. So I think just showing my work ethic and just being present as, a male father figure in their life.
Outside of that, then, I mean, outside of your own family, in terms of role model, inspirational people, things like that, I mean, who's your sort of go-to?
Yeah, I mean, 1 year. So 1 year, I think I have year goals. So 1 year was like meet as many people that I've listened to their content or I would like to meet, and hopefully meet them all for free. So I met everyone for free. Like, it's not really sneaking in, but like I found in Manhattan different like company launches where somehow usually my brother went with me. My brother and I would get in, and we're not even related to anything in terms of that field. So I met Max Levchin, the co-founder of PayPal, that way, and got to talk to him for literally probably a minute, and then got a picture with them. I've met Gary Vaynerchuk that way, Lewis Howes, Gerard Adams that year. I met all those people for free. So I think people saying, oh, I can never get a minute with that person or a minute of their time, or really, see them for free, or really like bounce an idea. Like, there's always a way. So it just takes time. So for people that if I met at a conference would cost me, several $1,000s, I literally paid train fare into Manhattan and whatever else I had to drive my car to really meet them. So, I mean, in terms of a marketing slash, I guess, motivation, I would say Gary Vaynerchuk, because he has a similar Eastern European background. He's from like Belarus, and he came here a little earlier. But I listened to him more so for the marketing perspective. And he basically got into marketing out of nowhere as well. But he does have that motivational component. So I would say Gary Vaynerchuk. Overall, I like listening to Joe Rogan, just because like the eclectic selection of guests. And at this point, I don't even know, he's over 1,000 episodes, I guess. I would say Gary Vaynerchuk, like I said. I would say Ed Milet, his podcast is decent. And some other people, just I think entrepreneurs and people that are self-made, and are, like we talked about, grit, really made it themselves, really overcame stuff, and can really talk about it, not only talk about it from an outside perspective. So, I can have a conversation with you, obviously, about foster care, but it would be a little different if you're a foster parent as well. So it's one of those things where, like, you have in business and entrepreneurship a lot of imposter syndrome also. So people telling people how to be successful business owners where they never created a successful business. So I try to look for people that have built things themselves from the ground up, and really kind of are self-made in that sense.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, well, tell me, I mean, let's get out there in the universe. Who's top of your most wanted list then?
In terms of just meeting, or in terms of my podcast? Because my
Yeah,
podcast strategy hasn't really my podcast is interesting because I was like, I'm not going to chase people. At this point, a lot of PR agencies and publicists just, pitch me all the time in terms of guests. So I think we talked about goals. One of my goals in end of 2020, like in a month or two to 2021, is really starting to target people that I've either met for a minute or two, or people within different industries that, have inspirational stories or are coming from, and then can add value. So maybe there's an athlete out there that was, a foster kid in the system. So like, I don't want to just to have them because they're a pro athlete, because they can relate to what I can speak to, that can relate to, I know a lot of people, a lot of kids and people listening to the show, in terms of being in a foster care system, former foster children, and just really being thoughtful and mindful, I guess, about the guests, and not just like the caliber. Like, I'm not going to say I'm going to deny, like if Gary Vaynerchuk said, hey, I want to come on the show, I'm not going to go to him, what can you add in terms of value? But really being thoughtful, I think, about the guests I have on, because like I said, I have a lot of content. I think I have a year's worth of content at this point, and just now uh, really telling the stories that, I want to tell, that I think are impactful, that
Hmm.
may or may not have been shared before.
I mean, are you happy to take on the sort of, being a bit of a niche leader in the likes of the foster world, and things like that, or is it something you lean into?
Yeah, I mean, with anything, if you get thrown into something, it's just like you get thrown in the fire, and it's what's going to come out of it? Are you going to come out a leader or not? So, I mean, I've taken on leadership roles indirectly and directly in different agencies I've been to, mentoring people. I think if you ask for anyone that at other agencies has worked for me, that I've added value to them. So I've made them better operators, better professionals, that has helped them get to where they are really now. And that really benefits me.
Hmm.
So I know for a fact, like the skill sets that I've taught people have gotten them opportunities, and also indirectly like mentor people. But yeah, I mean, I personally think so.
Would you say you're understood as a person?
Sometimes understood, sometimes misunderstood. And then I just like, I mean, it's early here, so I lost my track of thought. But your last point is there's not a lot of male figures talking about foster care or the perspective of foster care from from a male. So I think sharing my experiences and what I've been through, and also the tie-in with the miscarriages. A lot of women share their experiences, but they don't necessarily, men don't necessarily open up about what it is like from the male perspective. I'm not saying it's harder, but it's different.
What I mean, talking about the miscarriages, what is your perception of the whole thing?
Um, it's really, well, we're doing another cycle, so hopefully we have another transfer soon. But it's fairly like, if you think about it, very masochistic, because you go through one, and then okay, let's keep our hopes up, and then you go through a second one, and it just beats you and beats you and beats you. I mean, there's that emotional void that will resonate or stay with me forever. Kind of like what if, obviously, these five lives, what if. And it's hard, because I think from a male perspective, sometimes you don't know what your wife or partner wants or how you can help them, because
Mm.
they're experiencing the same thing but from a different standpoint. And oftentimes, like for men, and well, me especially, like Eastern European men, they're very stoic, don't really show emotion. I mean, I think that's a lot of guys, but I think it's kind of like if you go to Eastern Europe, you'll see that more also. So it's really like dealing with it in my own way, and not necessarily even talking about it that much. And by not sharing it and not showing emotion, your partner, wife, girlfriend, whoever, thinks you don't care. So that was one of the things where it's like, how can you like sit there and but like you're struggling with this inside. So I think really looking at someone, and just because they're not like going through the motions of something, or they're not grieving the way you think they should be grieving, doesn't mean that they're not in pain and aren't going through something inside.
Mm. It's so true. I mean, just different people have different ways of doing it, and that's also subject to their background and history and all the rest, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's another thing to consider, like with everything. So like there's more than one way to do, a task or feel something, and everyone is an individual. You can't expect someone to do something the way you do it. And I think maybe 10 years ago, in terms of like my profession, I would think, they're not doing it the way I want it done, so it's not the right way. But there's more than one way to do anything. I mean, you feel what you feel. Somebody can't force you to feel or express something the way that they feel it. I mean, it's unique to you. So you be real and honest with yourself, and just kind of go through that, with those around you, but express it the way that you were meant to express it.
Mm. And I mean, obviously, going through, one miscarriage, but to go through five, I mean, it's how do you sort of clear that in your own head?
I mean, yeah, you can to a certain extent, but you can't also to for 100%. get rid of it. It's one of those scars, it's 5 scars, that adds, value and stay with you even though they were traumatic. You learn something from each of them. And only thing you can do is try to be as positive as you can be, but oftentimes it's hard, with the result that's happened 5 times a certain way. So, I mean, it's just kind of being there for my wife and helping her, because she's going through the brunt of obviously the whole physical thing. So before each embryo transfer, she has to get these like shots, probably like this big, into her lower back every day. And I personally hate needles, and I'm not going to be a baby about it. I have to give them to her. She's obviously experiencing that to basically get the body ready, or have the body think like hormone wise that, it's pregnant. Because if you just implant an embryo and like the hormones and stuff aren't right, your body naturally wants to, reject anything that's, foreign in that sense, and it's not hormonally correct. So, from all the hormones and stuff has, set a toll physically on my wife, obviously, like led to health things, different like chronic headaches and mood things and other things, because you're getting shot with so many hormones. It's ridiculous. So from that perspective, obviously she's going through the brunt of it, but all I can do is try to help as best as possible and just be there for her and be wishful and, pray about it in terms of like a different, the outcome that we're looking for.
It's interesting. You talk about this. 5 scars. It leaves an impact, as does all the sort of children that have been with you. You'll always have a place in your heart for them. That's quite something to do that. I mean, in terms of emotional state and energy state, etc.
It is. And it's one of those things you think back and like, what would you do different, or what would you avoid? And if I knew the possible result of the whole infertility treatment is at this point in this stage of September of, this year, being at, losing five babies that would have been, born, would I say yes to? I mean, if it was to, create a life, I would still probably go through it. Obviously, it's painful, and I would want to avoid it if we could have had a child the first time around. Yeah, but I mean, at a certain point, I mean, it gets a lot. I mean, it's a lot at this point, but we don't know if we're going to do one more transfer, maybe two, depending on the result. But I mean, at this point, it's just constant. And like you said, it's emotionally like taxing, and coming back from it each time and just trying to get back to, some kind of sane state. And let's face it, everyone's busy. A lot of people are going through a lot of traumatic things, including miscarriages, family deaths, and they don't have the proper time to cope or heal. They get thrown back into that, rat race, I guess, into your job, into whatever. I mean, oftentimes people work for companies that aren't as sympathetic to what you're going through. It's, get back to work. And we don't necessarily take time for that emotional and mental health. I mean, I know in the US and obviously other countries, mental health is one of those things that is underlooked and not necessarily talked about, but it's really important. And things like that can lead to, a mental breakdown and ultimately depression and different things like that.
Do you keep a monitor on your own internal language and sort of your own state? I mean, is that something you just you talked about working out and you talked about sort of a bit of self-care, but I'm just wondering, are the two connected?
Yeah, I mean, I try, but most of the time people put me in like check. It's like, listen, like if they know I'm going through something, maybe I become short or like loud or like whatever. Like usually people around me do a good job of telling me like, listen, like this is like spilling out into, situations where you're like taking it out on loved ones and friends and stuff. But other than that, I mean, I try to better talk through. If my wife listened to the interview, she would probably be like, listen, you like jump to reactions, you don't talk through things. but it's like situational. You can't do something 100% of the time. Like every day I struggle to be motivated. Every day I try to kind of reevaluate who I am. And it's an everyday thing. It's not like you magically cut out a thing out of a magazine and this is who I want to become. And like you look at it and you magically become that. It's just one of those things where it's like, it's not a destination. It's an ongoing journey with a moving target. You're never going. And if you do reach a place that you're content with, and it's like a plane, you know, a plateau. I mean, you have to go somewhere. At least I do. I mean, people become complacent and just kind of slow down and put their foot on the brake. But for me, like my energy and like my thought process, I constantly have to be kind of focusing on something and moving towards something.
Mm. Well, that's interesting. I mean, in terms of, for you and getting into your optimum flow state and stuff, take us there. What gets you into flow?
I mean, I have a kind of a routine in the morning. Really, majority of my routine is focused around other people and other things. So I have to take all the kids to daycare, and I have to get back, feed my dogs, take my dogs out. I mean, I work remotely from home, or at least during COVID, mainly from my home office. And before that, cup of coffee, sit at least usually 15, 20 minutes with my wife, maybe talk a little bit, just kind of enjoy our company, each other's company. And then just kind of trying to recalibrate. Sometimes I need to read something. If I'm sensing myself being down or kind of like distracted about something. And sometimes I need to read like a go-to quote. And usually a quote is like the season of my life. So like there's always a few quotes, I guess, every year, maybe sometimes even every month I hear something. Sometimes I have to hear something or play something 5-6 minutes, something inspirational to kind of just get me like hyped. I mean, like coming from sports, sometimes you have that like entry music or whatever as a team, or just like you close your eyes and you're like with yourself and just hype yourself up a little bit and then like just get into your day. And sometimes it's like, I feel energized. I feel like alive and driven, and I don't need a lot of that. But, oftentimes I have to take at least, I would say, up to a half hour just kind of for myself to really like be at one with my thoughts. And then, like I said, if I need to read something to kind of like propel me or like give me a little boost, or listen to something and then really get into my day.
I love that. It's just, yeah, just get in. I mean, what's in terms of music and go to there? Where are you? What sort of?
Music, honestly, whatever is really playing. I mean, I think I have my life soundtrack is fairly eclectic. So it's not like any genre I will, I guess, listen to. But now a lot of the music is I try to substitute the music for like something impactful, like a speech or a talk, or if I'm listening to some kind of series, just so I can get somewhat more valuable, because more often than not, I've heard those songs already. It's just like hearing that song and maybe putting me in that mood. But sometimes it's like I need to read something or listen to something that I can maybe be motivated, but take something out of it as well. Take something actionable that I can, do after listening.
Mm. No, I love that. It's just getting through. So tell me, what's a bit of a guilty pleasure for you then, Roman?
What is a guilty pleasure? It's a good question, because with everything going on, I don't even know if I have one. Um, I do not know. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes just I don't even remember the last time I watched sports. So sometimes it's just taking a half hour and clearing my head. Just they call it like whatever, the dumb tube or whatever. It's literally just like putting the TV on. Sometimes like reality show, like they have like some shows like 90 Day Fiance or some crazy reality show like that, just to watch something stupid for 20-30 minutes, and then just like, okay. But obviously that can get to a point where you binge it, or you do your whole, Netflix releases the whole season and you spend 13 hours of your life straight doing that, and you get kind of caught up. But it's just, I think, just kind of like dumb reality TV once in a while. But it's not, I mean, I've been having to put that on the back burner with like me having all these responsibilities and, 4 kids. It leaves less time for things like that, which is also good in a sense, because I can be
more driven and avoid the things that may have or may suck up a lot of my time if I let them. Pre-COVID, and I don't even remember, but I'm in New Jersey, so I live about 3 miles from the Pennsylvania border. And in Pennsylvania, in New Jersey, they have Atlantic City and casinos too. But I have a casino for me, maybe 20-minute drive. And back, excuse me, before we had foster kids, I'd like to play poker just to clear my head, really understand people, kind of learn people that way. That's what I really did then, but I haven't done that in like 2 years.
I was going to say, yeah, it's good to down tools and stuff. In terms then of actually, I suppose your intuition side, and when you're getting to know, kids and for whatever length of time when they're coming to you, I mean, do you get? I mean, are you at the stage now where you sort of intuitively are able to sort of communicate with them as well as sort of picking up what's going on? I mean, how do you rate that?
I think so. Some are coming from situations where they should be verbal, but they're nonverbal from the abuse that they've been in. So, like, one of the biggest things is really getting them to a safe place in terms of their environment and mentally and emotionally for them to go back to the natural development, process of their age. And oftentimes, kids were nonverbal that came to us that are and were the kids that left and went back, or whatever the situation was, are speaking without like stopping now. So it's like really rewarding in that sense where you're like adding to the healing and the repair and just kind of the mentorship of a child, especially a child that has different developmental delays, oftentimes because of the abuse and trauma they've either experienced or saw. So I mean, it is really rewarding, and I think it's really hard and tedious in terms of getting to a child, because each child kind of safe place is different, and you really need to understand what that is, and oftentimes just like really evaluate, I think, being a good observer and to really know what may trigger a child too. So a lot of the time maybe abuse happened in the bathtub or something, so if they walk by the bathroom, like they start getting skittish or whatever, and then you have that conversation before they have to take a bath, because they have to take a bath at some point, or different situations like that. Like there's different triggers, and you really have to learn and observe. So I think it's really being a good observer, a good listener, and in a way, I'm kind of like their therapist or their psychiatrist. Indirectly, they may not be telling me, but they are telling me with their actions and their body language and things of that nature.
I mean, do you have to go through a sort of a decompression process or anything? I mean, in terms of, I suppose resetting when you see and hear all these things, it's just not normal, right?
Yeah, I get to a aggression state because I want to take all that aggression out from the adults that put the kids in that situation. So yeah, oftentimes, and I mean, the system is broken a lot of times. Okay, so one thing I don't agree with is, okay, let's say a child was taken today. That parent or guardian may have visitation next week, so they have supervised visitation with the child that they neglected or abused. And it's like, for me personally, from life, that's like almost a reward, you know what I mean? And it's like, there's no necessarily like negative consequences per se. It's very lenient, so it's not like real life, in my opinion. uh, I mean, there's a lot of flaws like that. I mean, oftentimes kids go back, and there's a high recidivism rate and a high chance of the same thing or something maybe even worse occurring, because the kid is going back into the environment that they were in, that a lot of the times the caseworkers are overloaded on cases. They, if you're in any stressful role, I get it. Oftentimes you become desensitized, you become like emotionally disconnected with, like you said, that trauma and the sheer things of what people are capable of from that negative light, and it impacts your psyche. So I don't think caseworkers don't necessarily have the right, mental health training or therapy to go through it. And a lot of them burnout. There's a high recidivism rate for them too, to just quitting or leaving. Sometimes they just get to a situation where they don't care, and oftentimes the kids become a number, just a case number. And it's tough because, I mean, there's no winners in that kind of situation.
Hmm. No, I mean, fair play to you. It's it's going through and understanding that, as well as dealing with your own journey at the same time. I mean, it's, you know, like I say, it's an awesome thing to do, really, and to be able to help in a way as well. Going forward, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Um, Hopefully, well, I would like to move at some point, more down south. So something like Florida, somewhere in that area down south, just for the weather and for the taxes, because Florida and other states, Texas, Nevada, do not have any state income tax. So you'd be keeping that percentage, which is obviously nice. Hopefully, personally, either uh, having biological kids as well as adopting out of the system, and hopefully then still fostering. But if we do move to a different state, we need to get relicensed and re-registered in that state, because it's not a federal system, it's a state to state system. So the way they do things, their laws and stuff like that may be different. So we would have to do that. But growing my business, I don't know what the state of podcasting will be. I mean, if it's around and I still have my show, I'll be probably on episode, I would say, like 1200. So it's a daunting task, but everybody starts with episode one and kind of has to go somewhere. But just, I would say, an improvement in my life. I don't necessarily know where I will be in 10 years. I mean, those are kind of the general things, but I think taking the steps every day, those little steps, will get me to that, whatever that may be. That may not be what I thought it would be, but it will be some measure of success based on the things that I do on a day-to-day basis.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. It's the little actions every day is going to build up and compound going forward. So no, I totally get it. What's a particularly proud moment for you?
I would say becoming a foster parent. Um, I would say that because those professional goals, I mean, they're going to keep coming, and I know, and I'm not like hiding the accomplishments I have professionally, but just becoming a foster parent is just one of those things where it was just like out of the blue, and we didn't know we would. If you asked me 3-4 years ago, you're going to be a foster parent, I would just say like, no, you're kidding or whatever, or that's not a thing. But it was something that I did personally that's uncertain, that led to a lot of positivity, a lot of reflection, a lot of growth, and just analyzing how people are, how individuals are, how they can be, and just like what humanity is, for the good and bad of it, basically.
Hmm. No, I get that. I can see, and I didn't. I mean, is it a tough process to get into to become a
It,
foster
it,
parent?
it took us a year. So you have
Okay.
to, some people are shorter. You go to orientation, at least in New Jersey, you sign up, you do in-person training. So it's about, I would say, about 40 hours of training throughout, I think, like 3 months or so. So it's kind of like night classes, 3 hour long. I think it was once or twice a week, I believe. And now it's been via Zoom. You have to get a kind of case written about you, basically a story of your family, who you are, all that background information, criminal investigation, working, where you've worked. You need recommendations from people that have known you for a certain amount of time, to make sure your intentions are just and you're doing it for the right reasons. So you have that kind of family story being written out and created by somebody assigned to it. And you also need your home license and inspected. So you get a foster care license as a foster parent, and then your home gets licensed. So is your home safe? How many people can be in it? What the kind of living situation is, how many kids can be. Like, there's all these weird laws, like, 2 kids can be in a room, that aren't siblings to a certain age, but when they reach a certain age, they can't be in the same room. So there's all these technicalities and things like that that, you know, some make sense, some don't. And your house or home gets licensed for a certain amount of kids, up to a certain amount of kids. So if you are in the system and let's say your house is licensed for 7 and you have 2, if you don't tell them, they're just constantly get a call like, you know, we have a removal or we need a, you know, placement. And yeah, we've had, the most we've had is 5, but currently we have 4.
And can you guys see that changing at all, or is that just something you think it's just going to be part of you guys?
I would say part of us, the most frustrating thing we deal with is the system itself. So a lot of foster parents quit because of bad caseworkers, bad judges, bad law guardians that either, you know, fabricate things or just want to get a case off their plate and push kids back. And, you know, you find out the kids have been abused again. And it's just like, you think about the, you know, the justness of the system. The goal of foster care in New Jersey is reunification. I agree with reunification and rebuilding that family bond if it's able to be rebuilt, not reunification over everything. And that's what it seems to be. It seems to be a reunification over everything despite the best interest of the child. So if the child is the safest in this foster home currently and you're iffy, like inside your gut tells you not to, you know, put them back in this environment, why not give it an extra 6 months for maybe the parent to get their act together? Why not give the parent or guardian that extra therapy or that extra evaluation and really be sure? So I just have like different inclinations and issues with certain situations like that.
No, I'm sure it's because I mean, even I'm just thinking there logistically going on holiday or something. I mean,
Yeah, our first placement we actually we took to Disney World, so we took them down to Florida. We took them to my wife's or my father-in-law's in Nevada by Las Vegas. We flew with them, but you need permission from the biological parents. If they say no, and the trip is like, you know, beneficial for the child in terms of experience, then a judge has to sign off on it. Right now with whole COVID and pandemic, like you can't take, so if you are going somewhere out of state, you can't really take the child on vacation now because of COVID. So it's just, I mean, it's up in the air, but we, like I said, we try to teach the kids and have the kids like our own children. So if we are going on vacation, if we have the opportunity, we take them if they're age appropriate. Obviously, if we're like going hiking in the mountains and they're 1 year old, that may not be the best situation. But yeah, we try to give back and give as many experiences to the kids that they can take and apply and remember in their lives moving forward.
I mean, it truly is. It comes across as it needs to be a passion project. This is not just a whim and a prayer. This is full on.
Yeah, it consumes a lot of your life. I mean, it spills over into different parts of your life. I mean,
Mm.
it's an emotional roller coaster. You get angry at people. People are on a government pay scale, so they don't care a lot because there's not much movement in terms of opportunity or, you know, advancement in that sense. And they have, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure it is in other parts of the world, but once you work directly for the government, you like coast. You know, you don't do too much, you don't do too little, you don't go above and beyond. And there's situations where I need you to like really act right now, and it's just like maybe tomorrow, or like you email someone and it takes them like a week or two to respond, and it's just like you constantly have to like put fire under people and copy people on emails and contact people directly to really advocate for the kids. So you really have to be a passionate foster parent to really get the kids what they need and really advocate for them.
No, okay, I get that. I can see. Fair play. So, tell me, what is your fire in the belly then?
I would say just my resilience with everything, and as it comes, taking anything negative and just processing it and molding it into a lesson that I can then apply and move forward to deal with something that's bigger or apply to how I can become a person. So a better person. So I think it's just resilience with whatever life has to offer you.
Hmm. No, I love that. So tell us, I mean, how do people track you down, follow you, get on your show?
Yeah, I mean, I do have a somewhat tough last name, but if you Google Roman Prokopchuk, you can find me on any platform in terms of social media. I'm almost on every social media platform and pretty active. If you do Google my name, you'll see all my past interviews and things of that nature. You can find me on my company site, Nova Zora Digital. And if you want to listen in terms of my podcast, it's the Digital Savage Experience podcast.
Awesome. Anything you'd like to put out to the universe?
Just, be you. I mean, there's one of you, and do your best. And as long as you can get up tomorrow and have breath in your lungs, you can change your situation. So nothing is as daunting at times as you think it is. As long as you can wake up, you can change the trajectory of your life.
Love it. Well, it's been absolutely fascinating to have you on, and thank you for sharing so much, and thank you for being so candid.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.